Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moni wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and historic neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcasts. We want to invite all the authors and aspiring authors who are listening to the podcast to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Please be sure to click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to discover how we can help you celebrate your book with the entire world. Now, you know, if you are an author, especially an independent or self-published author, you probably had no idea that when you were writing your book and getting it published, you had no idea that once that book was published, that you became the CEO of a small business, your book business. Yeah, it is. It's a business now. And you had no idea that there are literally thousands of books published every single... You thought I was going to say year. No. There are thousands of books published every single month. It is so hard for a book to stand out in that crowd, especially an independent or sub-published book. But we would love to help you do that. If you visit readingwithyourkids.com and click on that Authors Click Here button, you will discover how you can be a guest here on the podcast. Being a guest gives you the chance to tell the world all about your book. It's fun, it's easy, and it doesn't cost you a thing. You can also learn about our Certified Great Read program. This is a program that has helped so many authors. You can also discover our monthly promotion program. We're really excited. We've helped so many authors to date, and we would love to help you. Please go to readingwithyourkids.com, click on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and discover how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. Joining us once again from the absolutely spectacular state of Colorado, our guest is returning to the show to celebrate books number 2 and 3 in her Caitlin and Rio adventure series. Please welcome back to the show, Sally Alexander. Hey, Sally, how are you?
I am great, thanks, Jed. Thank you so much for having me back. It's good to see you and be back, and I'm so excited to talk about the next 2 books in my series.
Now, if I recall right, book number 1 was The Missing Colors. Is that right?
The Lost Colors.
The Lost Colors. The Lost Colors. And that seemed like a really fun book. Remind everybody who Caitlin and Rio are.
So, book 1, which is The Lost Colors, starts off with, in the middle of the night by her wonderful, Ragdoll cat Rio, has come and it's all about how Caitlin and Rio and her best friends have to get to the bottom of who stole the lost colors and try and get it back. And part of that story is, well, when the world lost all its colors, it also changed Rio, and he became a talking cat with superpowers of mind control, but only on cat people, and telekinesis. And so it's thanks to Rio that they are able to confront a criminal mastermind, and his name is MacDougal. And so the next book in the series, which is The Missing Cats, takes off where the Lost Colors sort of ended. So it's a continuation of the Lost Colors, but it's also a standalone book. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So that's where The Missing Cats takes off.
You know, it's it's fun. I remember there are many times that I will jump into a series halfway through, whether it's a television series, a movie, or a series of novels. And it's actually kind of fun because to me, it's really fun because it's like, oh, there are all these more stories that I can jump into. And it's, I really look forward to it. The hardest thing about reading a series is when it ends and there's no more stories to read because you've fallen in love with the characters.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. I too love series. And often what happens, I think, I'm never lucky enough to get book one. I always seem to pick up a new series in the middle of the series. Then, I read the book and I enjoy it. And then it's kind of fun to go back to the library and hunt around for book one. And then I always try, because I'm weird this way, I always try to go back to a series and sort of read it in order. And I'm just weird like that. But I love series. I really do. And so with this Caitlin and Rio Adventure series, I wanted to create something where readers could enjoy some really great adventure stories that are standalone, but and they could read them in any order. So what I've done is at the beginning of each of the next books is a little sort of summary. Not giving away a huge amount, but it's just a summary so that if you're not familiar with the previous books, you get a little bit of a summary of where we're at with the story, and then you can pick up. Most series don't do that, but I just thought for this series and for this readership, I would do that. So in Missing Cats, there's a little summary in chapter 1, sort of like the story so far. And then the Wild Turkeys, which we'll discuss, which is book 3, has a similar thing. But again, you can read them in any order. You can also go back and read them in order because, things do happen that are not in the summary. So you can go back and enjoy things. So that was the intent.
Now, in the Missing Cat, does Rio still have those super magnificent powers?
Well, it's a little questionable because, not to give away anything, but I will, for this interview. The end of the Lost Colors, we're not entirely sure, because he was injured. And so we're not entirely sure whether he has all his powers. And Caitlin, of course, doesn't, is worried about him and things like that. But the Missing Cats is really about how Rio regains back his powers and how he and Caitlin actually solve the mystery of the missing cats. And so that's part of that story.
So neat. Where do you find inspiration for the story and the themes for the stories?
So I live in a suburbia. I live in a suburb in Colorado. And where I get my inspiration is I walk around the suburbs and, or I read things things online, about it. So the Missing Cats, the inspiration for that was, in our suburb, there's so many lost cats notices that get put on, postal boxes and the mailboxes and things like that. And I just, there's always, missing cat or missing dog notices. And so that's where I got the inspiration for this one, is it was like, wait a minute, what if in my Caitlin and Rio world, what if, there were all these missing cat notices and suddenly, the girls notice that, wait a minute, these are all blue-eyed cats. And so Rio is a blue-eyed cat. So they start to investigate and they find out that there is one single clue that links all these missing cats incidents together. And that is a catnip mouse that is found on the scene. And so they need to try and figure out and solve the mystery. So there's a lot of teamwork. I think in this world, you can't, you can't do it alone. And that's what the book's really about. There's a lot of themes about teamwork and friendship and not doing things alone, and, making sure that you can work together as a team. So there's that kind of themes, because I just believe we can't live in isolation. We have to rely on others. So there's a lot of that.
So true. And that's a lesson, I think a lot of adults still need to learn.
You are so right about that. Maybe adults should be reading my books.
There you go. It's interesting you mentioned that you get inspiration walking around the suburbs of Colorado. I was telling Sally that I had an epic cross-continent adventure last fall. And on my way back, I actually stopped to get my oil changed, because you have to be a responsible driver in suburban Colorado. And when the technician opened up the hood of the car, he came back with this thing, and he goes, "What's this?" And I said, "If it's underneath that hood thing, I have no idea. Aren't you supposed to know?" And he goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't belong here." And I go, "Got me. I don't, so maybe that could be an inspiration for another."
You got me thinking.
Well, here in Massachusetts, especially the greater Boston area, especially, and this might sound strange to people, right in the city of Boston, turkeys are quite aggressive and quite prevalent, and they're a real nuisance. And they're not fun. They're really nasty creatures. So,
aren't they?
Were they the Boston, the inner city Boston turkeys? Are they what inspired the wild turkeys?
Well, I'm not sure about the inner city Boston turkeys, but I did read an article about, and it must have been somewhere on the East Coast, where a group of wild turkeys had invaded the town and were really being very intimidating to the inhabitants. And I read that and I thought, oh, that would be interesting to introduce some wild turkeys into my Caitlin and Rio adventure stories. So that's the inspiration for the next book in the series, which is The Wild Turkeys. But I wanted to do something a little different. So some of the things, so this is going back to some of the backstory, which was set in book 1 with the Lost Colors. And what I thought about so MacDougall pulls all the colors out of the world, and in so doing, he gives Rio gets superpowers. But what about other creatures? Maybe they were also affected when MacDougall did this. And so what I thought about is, well, what happens if you have wild turkeys, but they have also been affected by MacDougall and his interference in the natural world. So this group of of wild turkeys is a quest-seeking group of wild turkeys, and they're on this mysterious quest, which the readers don't really know what that quest is. That might be picked up in a later book. I'm keeping it open, but they come to Caitlin and Rio with a warning, and the warning is beware the silver water. And so it's up to Caitlin and Rio and her friends to try and figure out what does that mean, because it's such a strange kind of warning. But that gets interrupted by Thanksgiving and a bomb blizzard that happens. So in Colorado, we get some really weird weather, and it can turn crazy in strange times of year. And so what I wanted to do was have a Thanksgiving, a very different kind of Thanksgiving celebration, where they're basically are stuck by a tremendous snowstorm that comes. And so Caitlin invites the tribe, I'm calling them a tribe of wild turkeys, to take shelter in her garage, while we're having a Thanksgiving dinner. And one of the tribe of wild turkeys, his name is Bert, and he's not quite right in the head. he escapes the garage and he ends up in the dining room where they're trying to have this big Thanksgiving meal, and he sits up at the highest shelf. And of course, chaos and pandemonium reign from that. That inspiration actually comes from a childhood story that I grew up with. I don't have any actual memory of it, but my mom always used to tell me about a chicken that they used to have called Henny Penny. And Henny Penny also used to get into the house, and she used to sit on the shelf in the dining room. And my mother once had this dinner party and she was trying to impress a whole bunch of people. And then she looked up and there was this chicken on the shelf looking down. And so that was kind of a little bit of the inspiration for the Thanksgiving scene that's in this book. But again, it's, I just thought it would be fun to have wild turkeys that have their own form of powers, and a Thanksgiving, a very different kind of Thanksgiving that happens in this one. So, so that's the inspiration behind book 3, which is the wild turkeys.
I love that. We had, an author, I believe his name was Dan Gutman, was on, and I asked him about where he finds his inspirations, and he was sharing, he goes, I love to ask myself, what if? And it sounds in some ways that you asked yourself, what if we had some turkeys over for Thanksgiving and there was this big snowstorm and one was up on the shelf, and what would happen? And it sounds really, really fun. And it sounds like a fun, kind of a fun way to create. I'm imagining that, especially in the first draft, as these ideas are coming to you, you're just sitting with your pen or your keyboard with just a big smile on your face going, oh, and this is going to happen next.
Yes. Yes, it's wonderful because that's what's so wonderful about writing and creating stories, because you can just go, oh, let me do this to my characters. Let me throw some stuff at them and see what happens. And a lot of the time, in your first draft, you're having a lot of fun with them and, making them try and solve things or throwing some curveballs at them. Obviously in later drafts, when you're revising, you might want to pull back a little bit, but yeah, I find that part of creating the stories so fun. And, I really enjoy that. And, I do hope readers enjoy reading about it, because I had a huge amount of fun creating the stories and writing them. So I hope it comes through in the pages.
I'm wondering, because there's a lot of people out there don't feel as if they have permission to kind of let their imagination go wild. You see this with kids. My daughter danced for years, and she danced with these really, really talented athletes, and they were amazing on stage. But if you took them off stage and you took them away from their choreography and you just put some music on and go crazy, a lot of times they sat there going, I don't know what to do. So it takes a little bit. There's something in your mind that has to say, I can do this. I don't need permission to kind of go wild and crazy and break the kind of rules of physics. What is it in you, and how would you advise kids and other aspiring authors to get to the point where you can just go, doesn't matter what the rules are. This is my story. I'm just going to do with it what I want. I can fix things later on.
I think that's a great question. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why I love writing for this age group, because I think you have a lot more license to let your imagination run free. But I think having imagination and letting it, and letting it just liberate yourself and be free with your imagination, I think we sometimes lose that. One, I think it's so important to be able to play And I don't mean just for kids. I think as adults, we need to learn to let loose, and we need to just play. Just let it out. I think that really helps us. I think we get so bound by restrictions and rules and things like that. And the other thing, I think it's about fear and vulnerability. I think we're so afraid to fail, and we're so afraid to look stupid that we're just one to follow the rules and just do what we're supposed to do. And I think we lose something in our creativity and our imagination if we do that. And a lot of about writing and coming up with these stories is about being vulnerable. It's about putting things on the page that might be stupid and silly, and you might fail at it, and people might laugh at you and say, oh, that's awful. That's a stupid idea. And I think we need to get away from that. I think we need to embrace failure and just let ourselves be and feel free to make mistakes. And it's okay if it's a first draft, just be free with your first draft, whatever it is, whether you're writing a story or you're writing a poem, or anything like that. Just give yourself permission to fail, because it's just a first draft, and you can always go back and fine tune it and polish it. And I think sometimes allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing yourself to fail, you come up with the most amazing end result.
Yeah.
Whether it's writing a story, whether it's a poem, whether it's a drawing or a painting, just let it out. Because I think we're so wrapped up in always being successful or always getting that A and never failing. I think we need to give ourselves permission to play and to fail and to be vulnerable.
Yeah. I love that you said it was okay to look stupid, because that's all I do all the time, it seems. But you're right. There is, and especially for kids, for younger kids, it's like, I got to fit in. I don't. There's so many kids. I notice it a lot with kids. It's like, look at me, look at me. Oh, don't look at me. You know, it's like they want attention. Then once they get it, it's like, no, look away. And when you're being creative, whether it's on the dance floor, whether it's writing a story, writing a song, whatever it might be, you have to be willing to let people look at you and be vulnerable. And you hope people will love it, but there's a real good chance they won't, and that's okay.
It is. You know, I know that there will be people that will love my stories, and there'll be people that won't, and that's okay. You know, the world is big enough, I think, for my stories and for other stories. And I think, going back to your comment about kids, I think it's hard to being a kid. I really do. Trying to figure out who you are, trying to meet expectations, trying not to fail, wanting to fit in. I think it's really, really hard. I remember when I was growing up, I never fit in. I was never part of the in group. I always wished I was, but no, that never happened. But I think it's hard, and it's all very well for me as an adult to be able to say that. But when you're a kid, you know, it's really, really tough, finding it within yourself to be strong and even not be strong, be vulnerable. It's okay. I think it's hard. I think it's really, really tough, these days.
But one of the things I think that we find, and hopefully if there are any young people out listening, and we do have young people listen to the podcast, I was delighted to find out. Most of my best stories, most of my most amazing memories came from those moments when I allowed myself to be vulnerable and took a chance.
I agree. and you never know. So sometimes, taking a chance and being vulnerable with things can have great rewards, and sometimes it doesn't, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be okay. And I think, my message to young listeners that are listening to your podcast, which, by the way, that's great, is with writing, write. If you want to be a writer or you want to write poetry, write. I kept a journal. I still keep a journal. I've been journaling since I was 10. That's a great way to practice writing, is to journal, to write out your own feelings and what's going on. I think that's important. But if you have a story, if you have an idea for a story, just start, write it out. Although I'm sure these days people are typing it. Back in my day, and I'm going to date myself, loved pen and paper. So that's also fun. To go back to that.
Absolutely. Hey, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about Caitlin and Rio.
So everything that you would need to know about Caitlin and Rio and what's going on with my writing projects, please visit my website. It is www.sallyalexander.com, and Sally Alexander is SALLY. Alexander, ALEXANDER.com, and Sally Alexander is one word.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of the Caitlin and Rio Adventure series. The 2 new books are called The Missing Cats and The Wild Turkeys. And our guest has been Sally Alexander. Sally, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much, Jed. Really appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading with Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here in the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guest. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.